report at Positive Hack Days about top 10 methods and techniques, and today we'll talk about the least popular methods, or rather unusual methods, tools that are used by cyber attackers. We monitor quite a lot of activities, and some are quite creative about their attacks. And I will today talk about the ones that I remembered the most. I'm Oleg Skulkin. I'm head of BI.ZONE Threat Intelligence. We do cyber intelligence. We gather information about threats from a variety of sources. We analyze them, and we present the results of our analysis to our customers. We focus on Russia and the CIS. So today I will be talking about those less popular methods and tools that are characteristic of Russia and the CIS. I myself do research, wrote a number of books and research papers. For 10 years I've been doing incident response, and for the past 5 years I'm in both incident response and cyber intelligence. As I said, people talk a lot about the popular methods and tools. So let's look at live examples of what methods and tools are seen as the popular ones. Well, if you read our research on, or rather called Threat Zone, has anyone read it? Again, quite a few hands. So if you read our Threat Zone research paper, you may have seen there our top 10 of techniques and methods. And in terms of the top 10, there's a variety of ways to gather them, because you can use various telemetry sources. If you look at our top 10 list, it was based on the incidents, the hits that we had at our SOC. We analyzed our telemetry, and because all of our detecting rules are based on MITRE, among others, so we looked at those hits, the ones that were not false positives, and came up with this top 10. You can do a similar exercise with incident response. You can do the same thing with cyber intelligence. Currently, we monitor more than 70 activity clusters that are active in Russia and the CIS. We have information about the techniques, tactics, and procedures that they use. You can take that, and based on that, develop your own top 10 list. But this one is based on our SOC. If you look at the list of the methods and techniques, they are quite straightforward. Because again, talking about a SOC, it would detect a malicious activity at early cycles of the attack, gaining initial access, trying a malicious code, talking to a command server, the very early stages. And of course, all of that has an influence of what would be included in that top 10 list. Another top 10 list from our colleagues from Kaspersky Lab, also taken by me from their MDR, that is something analogous to SOC, in case you don't know. And again, the top 10 methods here very clearly come from early stages. Because, as I said, SOC does an early detection, and again, the most popular techniques quite straightforward. Let us look at our overseas colleagues. Another top 10 list, and by the way, many techniques or sub-techniques intersect. We look at the third top 10 list already, and some of the tools and methods, you can see that they intersect. Red Canary is an MDR provider
предоставляют услуги СОК. Соответственно, они в том числе все это обнаруживают на ранних этапах.
Again, they do early detection and hence the composition of the top 10 list.
В том числе зависит от той телеметрии, с
What else determines the composition? The telemetry with which a vendor works. If you monitor
много инфраструктур, связанных с какими-нибудь облачными сервисами, например.
a lot of infrastructure related to cloud services,
Это cloud accounts. Да?
so here, for example, you would see cloud accounts, quite a popular technique. So if you monitor that, you would have hits related to your cloud. And in their top 10 list, you can see the cloud accounts method. And another top 10 list comes from Mandiant.
От техник, а не от подтехник.
Again, it's filled with methods rather than sub-methods.
Он сделан на основе именно их threat intelligence.
This top 10 list is based on their threat intelligence. So they took whatever they had in incident responses, whatever they had in their SOC, whatever they saw in the context of threat intelligence, and they came up with this top 10 list. And it correlates very well with what we have in reality. If you have ever done incident response or will ever do incident response, you will note that the techniques that are in this slide again are quite frequent. Let me talk about another top 10 list, and again I will talk for the most time about procedures rather than techniques, because if we take a technique such as PowerShell, for example, you can do pretty much everything with PowerShell. And so the variability of the procedures that can be implemented within this technique is endless. So those of you who try to map your SOC based on MITRE attacks, based on the techniques or sub-techniques, you're going to have a hard time. You can see that the sub-techniques are very different from the list that you have seen before. And now we will take a deep dive looking at activity clusters and procedures. So the first activity cluster that we're going to talk about has the name of Scaly Wolf. These guys are rather financially motivated, and they have a very broad targeting. They attack not just government institutions, not just commercial organizations, but they attack pretty much everyone. Originally, they used the white snake stealer, quite a popular commercial stealer. You can buy it in Telegram, you can buy it in commercial forum. And after we wrote about their first campaign in our blog, their account was blocked in a popular forum, because according to the rules of that forum, you can't work with the tools that they provide in the .ru segment, and they did. By the way, who knows what attribution is? Okay, not very many hands. But anyway, an attribution is when we can attribute a certain activity cluster to a certain country or to certain individuals. Let's play. Does everyone see the name of the file? Resolution on withdrawal of documents, etc. And there's a small detail which could help you make an attribution of this file name to a particular country. I won't be talking about which country. If you have seen that, okay, good for you. So those guys were sending those files presenting themselves as a letter, an email from the prosecutor's office, and the purpose was to deliver the white snake stealer.
Так, собственно, ну, если вы видели наши исследования и блог,
So if you have seen our research paper and the blog, you would know that every activity cluster that we monitor has a mascot, and this is the mascot of that particular team. Those criminals use the masquerading technique to present a malware file for a legitimate file. This is a very widespread technique, and I guess pretty much everyone received phishing emails with an archive attached, and it had a file with some
мне очень понравилось, как они к этому подошли, они пошли дальше.
a serious name with
Письмо, архив.
some malware in it. But they took a step further. They attached a password, an archive which was password protected, and it had several files. And the person opens the first file, and it has something from the military prosecutor's office or from the investigative committee. There's a second file. The person opens the second file. It's also quite legitimate. And the second file says there's an attachment that you have to open to see the details. And the third file was an executable file. But when a person already opens the two files,
Кажется, что третий тоже легитимный. А на самом
they would deem the third one to be a legitimate one as well, whereas the third one was actually like the white snake stealer. And why the
благополучно...
criminals did it, they
Что с этим делать?
confused the victim and compromised the systems.
Типичное название файла.
Okay, so what do we do with this? First, the non-typical file names. If you have
Довольно странно.
in your planner processes under the name of the ruling by the prosecutor's office, well, that's strange.
Не просто вот он запустился, собрал аутентационный материал из
Then features of functioning.
или отправил на командный сервер и сам удалился. Нет. Как мы видим, у него есть, во-первых, закрепление в системе, это значит,
We can see that
в том числе
it
можно выпускать
resides in the system, it works as a loader, you can use it to launch
компрометированные системы.
commands.
Использовали сервис, который называется
The adversaries use the Surveo service and use the SSH tunnel.
можно подобную активность
So quite a good attribute through which you can
на
identify this activity.
я думаю, вы видели, часто мелькал
Another example, you may have seen PowerShell, Windows Command Shell in the top 10 lists.
любой атаки, это супер характерно.
For any attack,
Инциденты, которые когда-либо
for a lot of attacks, that's quite characteristic. So for any attack that I investigated, there were artifacts in PowerShell logs.
есть сильно менее популярная история.
But
Есть Python.
there is a less popular technique,
Данный кластер, собственно, использовал его.
and the mysterious werewolf used this Python-based backdoor ring spy.
И из интересного злоумышленники, помимо того, что они использовали данный бэкдор, они еще и
And on top of using the backdoor, they also loaded the Python interpreter on the host. And again, they attacked government institutions, they attacked the military production plants. And a common user would not have a Python interpreter on their machine.
сильно хуже, потому что
The Python scripts are detected much worse because they are used much less frequently. And such an activity on the host machine is
позволял
hardly can be called typical.
данный бэкдор загружать там дополнительные инструменты.
So this helped adversaries to stay unnoticed for a while and load the codes that they wanted,
конфиденциальных, которые они собрали, можно было уже
so that the confidential data that they have gathered could be sent to their command server or to a legitimate cloud service.
очень
what is to be done with that? They often use the C URL to upload something from the compromised system. In general, if adversaries use phishing emails, they target ordinary users, very seldomly administrators. So if you see unusual CURL usage that is used to upload something onto that machine, that must be something bad happening. Then auto-loading folders. There was this script that loaded a Python interpreter. And again, because these are ordinary users, they shouldn't have a Python interpreter in the first place. So the appearance and the launch of a Python interpreter is a good red flag pointing to the fact that something is going on. Next, another curious technique used again by the werewolf cluster. They attack government institutions, they do espionage, and they, by the way, send phishing emails that have documents attached to them. They exploit old vulnerabilities detected in 2017 and old Microsoft Office templates, which seemingly should be detected by everything. But still, sometimes such attacks on corporate networks end up to be quite successful. Okay, so what they did. After the victim received the phishing email with the malicious document, opened it, and the payload was uploaded on the compromised system, the payload and all the necessary files were not just stored on the file system on the hard drive, but they were stored in alternative NTFS data streams. And if we do a forensics analysis and we don't pay attention to what's in the alternative NTFS streams, and this doesn't happen every time, that depends on the forensic experts that does the expertise. And they exploited old vulnerabilities, as I explained. The systems that they attack, consequently, would hardly have any sophisticated security tools. And the adversaries, by doing that, want that in the subsequent forensic analysis of the image of the compromised system, it was difficult to detect the compromised files, so hence this technique. And Dmitry Kupin from FACT later today will be talking about this activity cluster. You can visit his presentation and listen further on this cluster's activity. Okay, what can be done with that? And by the way, another interesting feature was that all temporary files were deleted. So if you see an activity that this folder is being cleaned, that could be a red flag of an bad activity. Adversaries used used run, as you can see, and this makes me laugh every time. There can be a very sophisticated attack, but people would still use this good old run approach, which is quite easy to be detected. In terms of alternative data streams, if you can see that something is launched from an alternative data stream, and you can detect that by seeing a file 123 XML and then colon and then the name of the file to be executed. If you see something like that, then with 99% that is something bad happening.
Это кластер активности, который называется...
This is one of my favorites, this rare wolf activity cluster. They do attacks in both Russia and Ukraine. So despite the geopolitical context,
активные в разных странах.
these adversaries are active in more than one CIS country. They downloaded quite a big volume of data. They used a mask to copy Microsoft Word. They copied the Telegram Messenger catalog.
На командный сервер.
And they needed to send this to the command server somehow, but they didn't send it to the command server. There's this great utility which is called BLAT. I never before heard about it, but when we found this file, which was doing a lot of funny things, and one of the red flags was this BLAT utility, which was used in a very weird fashion. There's this C Intel catalog. Many people would know it, and many would want to put something there. If you do incident detection, if you do threat hunting, you want to look at what's launching from C /Intel. If you find something with high probability that's going to be malware. So people didn't use a server to download information, but that was done very elegantly. That was the first technique that I memorized and that gave me the idea to make this presentation. So look at the command line. This utility helps you send an email to yourself with a command line. So they would collect all the files with the extension of doc and docx. They would build an archive, and they would use blat.exe to send all this data to their email.
Очень забавно. То есть никакого командного сервера, все вот очень у них...
Very elegant. No command server. They use quite a few utilities, and they would put quite a lot of things to C/Intel. In fact, they are quite noisy in terms of what they do, but work quite elegantly still. Okay, what do we do with that? If you see that something is launching from C/Intel, there's it's highly likely that it's malware. And it's not necessarily related to this activity cluster, but it can be related to anything. This is just a catalog that is often used by attackers. And they also gather all files with the extension .doc. If you see a process which gathers files such as docs, XLS, PDF, this could be a red flag that your data is being gathered to be archived and then sent. And again, because BLAT is a command line utility, it has some parameters in the command line that you want to look for, because the utility can be renamed, but the parameters and flags are more difficult to rename. So you might want to look for this activity in your forensic examination. Another story related to command and control. I think you may have seen that many attackers use legitimate remote access tools, such as TeamViewer, AnyDesk, super popular tools. Many use them. RMS and TeamViewer can be used to get initial access. And you may have heard about import substitution as well. that we have in this country. And the attackers think, okay, people are doing import substitution, so we wouldn't be able to connect AnyDesk or TeamViewer because they are blocked. But there must be companies that develop remote access software. And for example, there is this locally made software which is called Assistant. And the attackers in question used this software, perfectly legitimate, to get access to the system. And the servers of this assistant software are not blocked because not many people know about it anyway. And again, it's quite difficult to detect because this is not the most popular tool. This helps the attackers to bypass the security. What can be done with that? This software, when it's installed in the system, well, again, they get initial access to phishing emails. They set the attributes of hidden and system, which is not characteristic for legitimate installations of this system. So you can monitor executable files with such attributes. This might be not legitimate, or otherwise your system administrator is willing to spy after someone. Next is weird catalogs, and as you have seen in the previous slide, there's a custom location of the executable file. This also deserves attention. This could be a red flag of a malicious activity. And there is a section in the registry which contains the hashed password with which you can get access through this assistant software to the compromised system. If some processes write something there, if it's not the assistant installation itself, most likely this is something not entirely legitimate. Next, impair command history logging. We have seen that attackers may use alternative data streams so that subsequent forensics could be made more difficult, but the attackers may, for example, turn off the monitoring means, or at least turn off the default login tools available in the system to make this analysis more difficult. And this is an example of hacktivists who successfully attacked Linux systems, and they deleted the environment's variables that are responsible for logging. The most popular one in Linux is SSH, so they deleted quite a lot of data related to SSH. They deleted the bash history and deleted the relevant variables. But there's a fine point. If you have MDR, that's not that doesn't work, because it would record all the commands anyway. If you have ADR, you can see all the commands and everything that attackers do, despite their efforts. But if you don't have it, then yes, they can be successful, and the forensics guys will be struggling that even though there are so many logs, there's nothing to start from. What could be looked for here? Attackers often use SSH to get access to the system. Quite often they use VPN providers. So if someone is coming to your server through SSH from some strange VPN providers, there's a big probability that something bad is about to happen. Most attackers that works for both Windows and Linux use the
там данные собрать, для того, чтобы там...
tools available in the operating system to gather data to see what processes are running. And if someone on your server is trying to look at running files with ls or something else, especially if before that there has been a connection from a VPN provider, then it's a good sign that tomorrow your database may emerge in one of the well-known Telegram channels. And attackers also use unset to delete the environment's variables. So again, the use of if you detect such a command, that means that the two previous stages were successful, and you should really be worried. Okay, we have looked at the techniques of the initial stage of the attack. You might now want to look at the technique at the end stage of the attack, the data destruction technique. Hacktivists
вашу IT-инфраструктуру немножко подуничтожить. Там вайперы какие-нибудь используют, программы-вымогатели.
Are quite happy to wipe some of your data and perform other destructive actions. There's a cluster called, what is their name? Hemihaina. So this cluster, who has been doing digital forensics? Please raise your hands. If you have been in it for quite a while, I guess you know about this DD to wipe your hard drive. So why do you want to use ransomware? You can simply use DD, and I used this util some 15 years ago to clean my hard drives, and they use that as well. You don't need any wipers or anything like that. Okay. In terms of data destruction, you don't want to detect the ransomware. You want to look at the life cycle of an attack, because when your ransomware is up and running and is deleting your shadow copies, then it's too late. There are also inbuilt utilities, LOLBAS, and others. If you detect that some inbuilt utilities are used in a funny way, you might want to read research white papers. There's a lot of information of how they can be abused. And again, DD is quite a typical command, and if it's used, then it's a bad sign. Okay, Shadow Wolf, they are financially motivated attackers, and they decided why use partner software, why develop your own malware. They used leaked source codes and builds of Logbit and Babuk. They use those. You can change the config in the config file. Who knows Logbit ransomware? Please raise your hands. Yes, these are quite widely known. This activity cluster has no relationship to Logbit. It's just a couple of years. The builder of Logbit 3.0 was leaked, and anyone can build their own Logbit. And that's why many groups started building their ransomware programs and use that, and they don't have any relationship to Logbit per se. And how you respond to it? If you have ransomware, they are very noisy. You can detect things much earlier at early stages.
вспомогатель в вашей IT-инфраструктуре, нужно
To successfully deploy ransomware in the infrastructure, security has to be disabled. And if you see that on a lot of your hosts, there's disabling of antivirus and EDR, that's when you want to isolate your network and do something, because that is a sign of ransomware being spread in your network. And if you can see that you have some hits even without the security features disabled, then you should also do some response measures. Another interesting technique, we have talked about forensics, and I don't want to ask again who's been doing incident response or forensics. In the previous example, we had the DD utility that can be used to create a disk image or to wipe a hard drive to store images. Here, the attackers decided that they don't want to use the noisy techniques, but they still wanted to get LSAS dump. And the solution was very elegant. I really thought this was one of the best and most elegant solutions. There's a util which is called WinP-mem. It's used by forensic experts to do a memory dump. They uploaded it on the compromised memory, and they did the memory dump, and they upload it onto their command server, and then, similar to forensic experts, they were able to analyze it. Very elegant, but difficult to detect, because this is a utility for forensic experts. It's not malware. Okay, so what's to be done? If you have WinP-mem somewhere, well, if it's an admin or a forensic expert, that's one thing, but other than that, it shouldn't be on a machine. Again, memory dumps. If you start getting large files with extension of .raw, then there might be memory dump for some reason.
На предыдущем слайде говорили, они используют и другие техники.
And the activity cluster also uses other methods. If WinP-mem doesn't work, they can use proc them. They can use a variety of tools to get information. So if you see something like that, there may be another malicious activity going on as well. Another example. This is Red Wolf working in corporate espionage.
Они использовали вот такую вот штуку,
and here's what they did.
Детектируете только запуск. Вот без командных строк запуск исполняемых файлов тоже это можно пропустить. Ну вот, собственно, indirect command execution, пожалуйста.
So that's an indirect command execution.
Мониторинг и ну тут.
In some instances, this helps them to bypass the monitoring tools. What's to be done here? The -a argument is suspicious. You don't come across it quite often. They also used planner tasks to get into the system. And there will also be other attributes around that, the launch of suspicious files, the communication to command servers that you can get through threat intelligence. There's a lot of things that you could detect. Okay, so what have we learned today? In terms of popular techniques, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Indeed, when you know these techniques, you can detect any attack. The top 10 techniques are well known, but if you detect those, it may be too late. So the set of techniques used by attackers
При этом самое главное, нужно фокусироваться именно
could be very diverse, and you want to focus on procedures rather than techniques. As I said, with PowerShell, you can do a lot of things. There's an endless amount of procedures that could be implemented. And why would attackers want to use non-standard methods? It's not that they try to please me, although I'm always secretly hoping for that, but they're doing that to bypass the security tools. So the less standard approach they use, the more probability that they will go undetected, and hence
на этом все. Мы в том числе выпускаем большое количество.
hence they use it.
Соответственно, можете по QR-коду.
And that is the end of my presentation. We publish a lot of research papers. Here's the QR codes which you can use and look up the standards and not so standard techniques that perpetrators use,
В целом,
that you can look up and understood what's